Everyone, it's Kathie. Thanks so much for joining me. I have a new project to share with you. We'll be using the November 2017 Paper Pumpkin Kit, and I have 3 more cards that I'm going to be sharing with you. All right, we're going to get started. We're going to be using Bermuda Bay ink, and we're also going to be using the tree stamp, but we're going to use the back side of that. And then I have Real Red, which measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And the white piece of cardstock is 4 inches by 5 1/4. And the Real Red piece there, I did white emboss the sentiment just to save a little bit of time. So here's a quick look of the finished card. I really like how it turned out. Super pretty. All right, we're going to ink up the back side of that tree stamp. And we're going to stamp about 3/4 from the left side and stamp at the bottom. And that way it keeps it straight. So we'll do the other side. And then the next part, we're just going to ink up about 1/4 way of that on that stamp there and just stamp a few times there right up to the edge. And then we'll go and finish off the other side. And it's good that the stamp has some lowlights and dark highlights there, so it doesn't have to be super solid because you want to see those different shades. And then stamp 2 more of those triangles because we're going to use that to add some dimension to this bow. And I did do 3 of them, but I didn't like the first stamp, so that's why there's 3. Okay, and then when you cut this one out, make sure you leave a white border, and then we'll also cut out 2 of these little triangles, also with a white border. Okay, and then we're going to add a little bit of detail using the Bermuda Bay. We're just going to ink up the one side and then just dab with your finger and then just stamp over top. And that way you have some dark highlights. And we're going to do that on the inside part of the bow. And if you don't think you did it dark enough, you can very well stamp over top again. Just make sure you dab with your fingers so you don't get the harsh lines. Okay, and then just shape it with your finger. And here's where I thought it wasn't quite dark enough, so I'm just going to add a little bit more on the end there. Okay, and now we're ready to stick these down. Now you could omit the added dimensional pieces here and just continue on, but I think it looks so much nicer with this. And just to keep those pieces up, you can add some dimensionals on the back of them. All right, and we're going to use the snowflake from the stamp set just to finish off the center part of that bow. So I did stamp this in Tempting Turquoise earlier and then just hand cut it out, but you can stamp yours with the same Bermuda Bay color. And I just stuck that down with a little bit of foam tape. And now we're ready to adhere that to the Real Red panel. Okay, now once I stuck this down, I thought, oh, I forgot to put a little bit of detail on the bow. So I'm going to take off the snowflake and then I'm just going to re-stick down that one side. And then I'm going to use the Bermuda Bay fine tip in there and just draw a couple of lines, 3 lines, very fine, very subtle. And then we'll just stick back down the snowflake. And I did stick this also on a top folding card base. And then to finish off the card, I did add a little gem in the center of the snowflake. Super easy, simple, and I think quite elegant. So here's a couple of shots of the finished card. And then we're going to move on to the second card. We're going to be using soft suede, crumb cake, And we'll talk later on about the eyes and nose pieces there. We're going to use 2 of the leaf die cut pieces. And I have a scratch piece of white cardstock, and I believe that's Pear Pizzazz at 2 1/4 by 4 1/4, and white cardstock there, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So here's a quick look of the finished card. Really cute! All right, starting with crumb cake. In the back side of the tree stamp, we're just going to stamp 1. That's going to be the head, but we do need another one, so I do end up stamping another one afterwards. And then here are the green leaves. Just make sure they're at the same orientation, opposite each other. We're going to color in the bottom leaf on each side and just make it really nice and dark, because that's going to be the ears. All right, and then we're going to just lay a bit of color on the rest of the leaves there, just so that it mutes the green color. Okay, so now we have that ready. We're going to move back to the headpiece and stick down those eyes. So the eyes, I used a 1/4 inch hole punch and then just drew in the dots with a black marker. Just going to stick down those eyeballs. And then we'll just hand cut out the shape right up to the edge of the image. All right, and then we'll just do a little bit of shading. Just make sure your edges are nice and straight and there's no jagged parts. Okay, and now we're ready for the nose. And the nose, I used a 1/2 inch hole punch, but I did cut it down just a little bit, just so that it kind of looked more proportioned. And then back to those leaf pieces, we're just going to glue them together. And then now we're ready to glue the head down. So see how those turned out to be ears on the sides, and then the antler parts. Okay, now back to that, or now we're on to that second triangle part that I stamped out, and this is going to be the feet. So I'm just kind of cutting it into a shape, kind of put it together, and then try to get a shape that's similar in size. You want it to kind of be oval and kind of straight at the bottom for the hoofs. And these kind of turn out to be a teeny bit big, so I did trim them down later on. And then swipe across with, I think, soft suede, because you want it dark. And that'll be the bottom part of the feet. And then with Pear Pizzazz and crumb cake, we're going to stamp out a trio of trees. So we're going to stamp with crumb cake first. And then with Pear Pizzazz, we're going to stamp kind of off on those 3 trees, so not directly over top. And then I did second generation, so that we have some green color trees in the background, but not too dark. And it does look really dark now, but once it dried, it looked really light and all the colors kind of blended together. So the little dots from the trees kind of disappeared. So I did end up bringing them back in using a white pigment marker. So you'll see that on the stills afterwards. And here's that green piece. Just going to stick that somewhat in the center of the white cardstock or card panel there. I have foam tape on the deer and also the ho 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 sentiment that I made earlier. I decided I'm going to use that on this card. So that's also got foam tape. And I did foam tape the paws too, by the way. Now this the trio tree, we're just going to stick that down flat. And then the sentiment will go over top there. So see how the detail is kind of all meshed together. It kind of looks a bit muted too. I don't mind it too much, but when I added the dots back in, it looks so much better. Okay, so for the steer part, stick down the feet first. So get the right placement, and then we'll stick the deer down. And then when you stick the deer down, kind of have his head a little bit crooked. It looks so much cuter. And I did put it on a top folding card base. And the center part to me looked a little bit too plain. So with Pear Pizzazz, I'm just going to add some snowflakes and the stars from the stamp set. So I think that looks so much nicer. Okay, and then the stills are coming up and you'll see the little dots that I added back on the tree. There you go. I really like how this turned out. Super cute. Okay, so we're going to move on to the third card. I hope you're enjoying the series. All right, third card, we're going to start off with Daffodil Delight, and we're going to make nice little golden bells, or Christmas bells. And we're going to stamp 3 of these. And the third one, we're just going to use it to create the little balls for inside the bell. We're going to use like 1/4-inch hole punch for that. All right, and then with Pear Pizzazz and the 2 little leaf stamps, we're going to use the 2 of them. So stamp 1 that's going in one direction and the other on the other bell. And then with Real Red, Stampin' Right marker, we're just going to add some dots for detail. And I use crushed curry to add some shading. Not quite dark enough, but you get the gist of what I'm trying to do here. I add more shading on the one side, so that's the left side. And then we'll just cut these out. And I do end up shading them just a little bit more afterwards too. And then there's that third one. Just going to punch out 2, and that's going to be the little bottom bells. Now we're ready to glue them together like so. And then I grabbed one of the leaf die cut pieces. I took off the top one with the 2 together, and we're just going to stick that at the top. And then the remaining 2, I cut them apart, and then we'll just glue them together so that we can stick them at the bottom of the bells. And then with a 1/8 hole punch, I scribbled on a white piece of cardstock with Real Red. I'm going to stamp or punch out 6 tiny little berries. Very tedious, but it looks so much nicer by adding these. So we're just going to glue them down just to add these additional details. And then to finish it off, I used the twine from the kit. I doubled up on it and then tied a bow. So that's our little piece. And for the white piece of cardstock, it measures 4 inches by 5.5, or sorry, 5.25. And I decided to give a kind of an embossed border. So I came in up a 1/4 inches. Actually, it's a 1/4 inch all around. So I didn't go right to the end, but you just have to eyeball it to when you meet up at the corners. And then the bell piece, I did add some dimensionals on the back and stuck that down. And then the piece itself, I did add dimensionals on that too before I stuck it down on the top folding card panel or card base there. And I decided to use the joy sentiment for this card. So here's a couple of stills of that. I hope you enjoyed the 3 cards that were made today. I think they came out really nice, super pretty. Some a little bit harder than others, but fun to make nonetheless. Thanks so much for joining me today. Bye for now.